All right, thanks for tuning in to another edition of Prime Sports NASCAR, Prime Sports Radio Network. As we have reached another Friday, it's the 21st of February, 2020, and a long week of recovery for Ryan Newman, Eric. We'll always talk on this show, this Friday show, about what happened last week, even though we do a full recap with CJ earlier in the week, and that's available already on demand. But, of course, this is such a big week with Ryan Newman and the news of his health. It's great to see him leaving the hospital without any assistance except his children on his right and his left.
Yeah, I mean, for what it looked like on Monday night to fast forward 42 hours later to him walking out of the hospital is nothing short of miraculous. I mean, coincidentally enough, it probably was the Newman bar that was named after him that saved his life and likely Corey LaJoie's. Just that safety innovation that NASCAR has had over the years that we've always questioned. It's always like, man, they can make these safer. What can they do to be safer? What can they do over here? And you see a wreck of that magnitude and really the worst possible spot to be hit. And not only is he getting out of the hospital, he walked out under his own power and looked like nothing happened. So I do have to applaud NASCAR for the safety and listening to him a few years ago and saying, this is what we need in these cars. And they put that extra roll bar in there, named it after him. And who would have thought that he'd actually need
Right.
it? And he's walking away. I mean, he looks – we still know the extent of his injuries. It has me curious, like, man, from where you went from closing the car off and to whisked away in a hospital in an ambulance to the hospital real quick to leaving looking like nothing happened, and they said these injuries are serious.
Yeah, right. Where were the serious
What
injuries? Exactly. What happened?
Yeah, because he walked out. Yeah. It just, to me, if it was that serious in 42 hours, so he's obviously not racing this weekend. I'm just curious, not to sound like a jerk, but it's like, what were those injuries? And because the way he looked, it's like, man, he could race next weekend. I mean, what's going on? So that would be my first question: is what were those injuries? And the second one is, does he have any interest in racing again? And if so, when is that time frame? Because that is miraculous that he's walking out with his girls by his side.
Yeah, you would. Everybody's different, but you'd have to. And look, it's so tempting nowadays for athletes to keep going another year because of the money that's out there. So I get it, but unlike NFL is maybe hockey now even more so. Maybe those are the other two sports where I can understand because of concussions are a lot more prevalent in those sports where you would say, hey, you know what, I've made enough. I wanna walk away. But NASCAR is in a league of its own when it comes to the potential health risks. And nobody would blame Ryan Newman if he said, hey, I've made enough money in my life. I'm ready to be a broadcaster or something like that. And why not? I mean, let's get – I mean, that was the funny thing. We talked about this last year too, and they opened up this past week with Keselowski, I think, and I forget who was the other one. I don't know if Logano, but he's been in the booth before. We've talked about this.
Yes, it was Logano.
What is it with these networks? Why are they going after drivers that don't have I'm looking for the right word, but when it comes to popularity – Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski are not top of the list. They're towards the bottom. They're not charismatic guys that fans want to listen to. So why are they your analysts? Why not get Ryan Newman and other guys like that people actually kind of like?
That would make too much sense, you would think, because it seems that I get what they're doing as far as with taking a current driver because they could speak from experience. They were just on that racetrack an hour ago, so I get that aspect, but yeah, I don't know, like why. I mean, yes, they're charismatic in front of the camera, but the fan base, it's not like Dale Jr., Jeff Gordon, these guys that have walked away, that are popular, they're iconic. So yeah, I mean, I get Clint Boyer just because he's funny and he's engaging.
Kevin Harvick, we've heard him.
Harvick, and although he's stepping out now because he said with his family and now that his kids can all travel to the races to. Because his daughter was too young the previous few years, but now she can go. So he's like, look, guys, the way these schedules have worked out most Saturdays, I'm just qualifying and that's it. So I can kind of have a vacation with my family. So he's stepping out. So that kind of leaves Boyer, Keselowski, and Logano. And it's like, I mean, there's other guys out there that you can find. So.
And,
I
and
mean,
let's
even like
not
a
go to
De
Jimmy
Benedetto.
Johnson either. We're not talking about Jimmy Johnson, as great as he is. I prefer Jimmy Johnson over Keselowski and Logano, don't get me wrong, especially
Yes.
because of what he's done in his career. And I actually think Jimmy Johnson may not make a bad analyst, to tell you the truth. I mean,
No.
I much prefer him over those guys.
I would too, and the obvious one, I'm shocked they haven't got. Maybe he just has zero interest, but why not Chase Elliott? I mean, he's your most popular driver. He's won 2 years in a row. He doesn't typically run Xfinity or truck races, so he's available. And I would thought, your most popular driver being on TV to call those
Yep.
races. That he's young, he's engaging, people like him. Uh, it would be a good guy to have in the booth. He knows what he's talking about, but I don't know those behind the scenes
Sure.
discussions,
Yeah.
whether there's deals in place, because it seems like Fox, for example, those are the guys they use on their Race Hub show during the week. So there could be contracts in
Yeah,
place, and
we would
maybe
think that's the case. Especially since
that's
they just coincidentally happen to be on the same team.
exactly.
So
There's got to be something, and they're all Ford drivers. If you notice, hard. Last year they used Stenhouse, who was a Ford driver at the time.
yep.
Boyer's a Ford driver. Maybe it's a deal with Ford and using their. I'm not sure, but yeah, that you would think if it was a free for all, a guy like Chase Elliott, William Byron, kind of the younger guys would
Well, if
make
you're going to use
sense. But
Ford, why don't we get Blaney in there? He's a likable
yeah,
guy.
Blaney would be a yeah, and
If you're going
yeah,
to use
exactly.
a Ford.
Out of the two Penske's, you have a third one sitting there. But yeah, I don't know what those contracts and those discussions are, but it'd be interesting to find out.
But like you said, it's a matter of who wants to do it too. You can't force
Exactly.
anybody to do it. Speaking of last week, before we move on to this week, we have to talk about the disaster of, once again, we get a late start for the Daytona 500.
geez.
Everybody's sitting around all day, especially the people that have been there for a week and a half, and they got to wake up in the morning, and they got to wait till 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 o'clock in the afternoon for the race to start. And sure enough, because it's Florida, we get a little storm, a little tiny storm that happens to be over the racetrack, and we get a rain delay, and then we get a suspended race until Monday. Second time ever in 65 years, something like that. But still,
62. Yep.
yeah. Still, fact is, you could see this coming. It's just annoying. And then what do they do on the holiday of the next day? Especially when you have people who have decided, you know what? Okay, I'll stay an extra day. I'm here. I'll stay an extra day. You're gonna have me wait until 4 o'clock the next day for the race to start again. It makes no sense to me. I don't know what they're doing.
No, I think we did this a few years ago when they switched, because at these times they proved when they first moved it to these late afternoon starts that it didn't work. So NASCAR came in like, all right, all East Coast races, it's either going to be, I think it was a 1 o'clock Eastern start, and if it was a night race, it was like a 7 or 7:30. West Coast, I mean, follow the same guidelines. So West Coast would be 4 o'clock, but they'd still start the night race around 7:30. You don't want to start at 10, but they had a standard time, kind of how the NFL is 1, 4, and 8. Those are your three start times each Sunday. Well, NASCAR moved that recently. Like, well, we need to include the West Coast fan, and nothing against West Coast fans listening, but you're not pulling the weight, and you get what you get. And it's like, why did we move back? Because a Daytona 500, it should be a day race. That's how it used to always be run. That's iconic. And starting it at, I think the original green flag was 318, or I'm sorry, it was 306. And then with the whole security and Trump coming in, they moved it to 318. And then you get rain delay. It's like, what do you expect? That race wasn't going to end during the day anyways, even if it went off without any rain, because it was going to end after 7 or near 7, and sunset was like 6 o'clock, 6:10 or something. So what do you expect? It's like one rainstorm is going to throw the whole thing off. And I don't like it. I would wish, I know everybody talks about scheduling changes and all this moving forward. Well, I think the first schedule change is any East Coast race, noon. Let's start at noon.
That's right.
And the West Coast fans, they've always said that in NFL games, hey, we like to wake up for breakfast and watch an NFL game.
Exactly.
You're throwing them out of their routine. They don't care. If they cared so much, these TV ratings would be soaring. Instead, it's going the other way. So nothing against the West Coast fans, but I could call them out. If you care that much, watch the damn race, because what we're doing is we're getting rain delays for us that are at the race, and we're having to wait because you're not even watching, and then we still get a rain delay,
Yeah,
and it's just
annoying.
like, come on. And then the next day, that a 4 o'clock starts. Like, come on. Like, I get the reason they did it was these teams had to leave for Vegas the next day, so they didn't want to go too late. But if you're not going to go early, can we not just make it a primetime Monday night race? Why 4? Because it got
Good idea.
low numbers. Like, let's just go to primetime then. Like, what's the difference? What's 3 hours really going to do for you? Like, can we just have started at 7? And, I mean, what were they going against? The NBA didn't have anything going on. It's like you.
And then throw in the fact that you're in that situation with the rain, which we've talked about before, a 5-minute rainstorm, and you're delayed for 2 hours.
Yeah,
and
it was sunny.
And they're so proud of their dryer technology, and look how quickly they dry up the tracks. I mean, come on.
Can we talk about the because I had the scanner in, I'm listening to the NASCAR channel and the dryers to the booth and the tower, and they're talking, which I was texting you and a couple other people about, like, oh yeah, we're about to race, and Fox still has last year's broadcast.
Yeah,
on.
I'm like, wait a second, what do
Yeah.
you mean we're about to race? I'm still watching. They haven't even come back to the racetrack yet.
And I'm looking at the radar, and I said, well, there's rain right behind us, like it's coming. We're not avoiding this. And the NASCAR channel said backstretch is good. Get the drivers to the cars. Spotters, get up to your stand. Make sure the drivers are standing by their cars. Car covers off. I even took the picture, put it out there just for people, because I knew the rain was coming. I could see it. But I didn't want people to think I was some kind of nut job. Like, what is this guy talking about?
Yeah.
The TV hasn't even. So I tweeted the picture out. Look, car covers off. Drivers are right there. We're ready to go. They're getting ready to hop in, and we get hit with that crazy rainstorm. It's like, what did you expect? Like, what were you doing? And it got those cars soaked. They didn't have time to put some of the car covers on, and it just, that whole thing Sunday could have been run better. And the biggest change you could have made is just started at noon, and we would have had this thing done in time before the rain. I mean, it's Florida. You're tempting fate. You do it every time. Why do we continually have to do this? So
and then the coverage, because anytime they have these delays, if you were a DirecTV subscriber, and CJ even told me it wasn't even updated on his cable guide, they don't even update the race on your guides. So
I had a lot of text on Monday about what did I miss the race? What's going on? I don't even see it. Like, oh no, it's still on at 4. Like, my guide shows Dr. Phil or something, and it's like, and I got to make a point next year. Say we start the same time. Say they say we're going to go green at 3:18. Do you know what day the Daytona 500 is next year?
What day it is?
Yeah.
No, what day is it?
Valentine's Day. How many?
Valentine's Day is a Sunday. Okay, next year.
How many people are going to stay around, even though they have dinner plans with their significant others, to watch a delayed Daytona 500?
Yeah.
It's like, come on, get over yourselves, move that up.
And then where was the post-race coverage? I couldn't find it. The post-race coverage they stayed on for a while on Fox, but I couldn't find anything after. And then I've got
they just went away.
Yeah, so I had no idea even if they had a post-race show. No idea.
I don't think they did. That's what was weird too. It's like you couldn't move the Fox Sports 1 because you're literally going against nothing. You can't go over there and put some post-race coverage.
Isn't that what that network's for? That extra cable channel for?
This is your big event, and you can't get them to switch you over there for they
have FS1 and FS2.
Yeah, just
they've got 2 extra channels. So
yeah, it's like the Newman wreck happened, and it's like everybody, which granted, it scared all of us, and it's just like, let's just forget about everything and see ya. It's like, hey, he won, but see you next week.
Daytona 500, a guy, a driver in serious condition, and we'll see you next week. So
yeah, didn't even give any update. It was bizarre.
Really bad, and this is why we weren't going to get ahead of ourselves with any sort of excitement on last week's show when we previewed the season, and I'm sure glad we didn't. But now we get to a track where it's a more normal track, a 1.5 mile track, and one of the things that we talked about off the air that we needed to find out about based on what we saw last year, and that was the race setup versus qualifying setups. And this is something that I just can't fit. Like, if I'm just looking at the practice speeds last year in these 2 Vegas races and the qualifying speeds, and then I look at the results, it's not making any sense to me. So try and explain what you found out when you dig deeper in what and how it can help us when we look at the practice speeds and the qualifying speeds this week and how to handicap the race.
Yeah, it's a lot, but I would say in layman's terms, for practice, only look at the long run speed. The single lap speed isn't going to tell you much because, and I broke it down too. I've got it here that these races on 1.5 mile tracks, they didn't typically see many yellows because these cars have so much downforce.
Terrible.
So
What were there like? There were no cautions in this race last year.
2 cautions, both for stage breaks.
That's
2018,
terrible.
we saw 4 for 29 laps, 2 of those for stage breaks.
Oh
In the
my
playoff
goodness.
race last year, only 4 cautions, 2 for stage breaks. So what's that say? Long run speed. Single lap speed, like all the drivers have said, yeah, 1 lap, it's cool. Your name's in the top 5 on the speed charts.
Yeah, right.
But the race isn't won in a lap. It's like this one, for example, is 400 miles. And that point just proves that, I mean, last year, just 2 cautions for stage breaks. The year before, we had 4 for a grand total of 29 laps. Well, the race is 267. That means there's 238 green flag laps. So you want to be good on your long run. So I found the guys that you want to watch are the ones that have good long run practice speeds.
And where can we get the long run practice speeds from?
NASCAR will release it, but I will have articles up, which today, coincidentally enough, is practice state. So I should preface that by saying NASCAR's changed a lot of their formats now, and Vegas is the start. And I can't exactly remember how many races this year's this way, but I think it's more than half, where they're going to practice twice on a Friday. So if the race is on Sunday, they're going to practice twice on Friday, and those are the only 2 practice sessions of the weekend. So at the end of that day, you're going to look at the 2 practices, and you'll look at, they have 5-lap run, 10-lap run, 15-lap run, and 20-lap run, and they'll have the top drivers on those runs like a speed chart. Okay. So who had the best speed over 5 laps? Who had the best speed over 10 laps? So I will do a formula over all that and see, all right, well, he's got good on 5 lap. He got better on 10 lap. He got better on 15 lap. Like, you could see the trends of who's getting better as the run goes on and who's getting worse. Okay. And we know with limited cautions that the guys that their cars get better as a long run goes on, those are the ones you're going to want to look at. And typically, which leads me into qualifying, that's all they do on Saturday. So tomorrow, all the Cup guys do is qualify. And it's an impound race. So that means you qualify, you can't touch your car. You're going to start, basically, you go through tech, and NASCAR will tech it and say, that car passes, that car is good, let's run qualifying, and that team, you can't touch that car. That way, remember a few years ago, we got, how many penalties did you see on race morning? Mm-hmm. This is their fix for that. If you pass Saturday, well, that car it's passed. It's qualified. Race team over here, you can't touch that car. Okay. It's done. It's qualified. The next time you see it, it's going to roll out to the grid before the race. So, that being said, you are going to race the car that you qualify. There is no changes. So it used to be, hey, you used to qualify on Friday, you'd have a qualifying setup. And then on Saturday, you'd practice and you'd switch everything over to a race setup, which is more long-term speed. So what teams were doing last year, where they were going to these races because they know that passing was tough, well, let's just focus on qualifying setup. We'll practice and qualify on it. We'll know we'll start up front. We've got clean air, and let's hope we stay there. But they found out that as your speed tailed off, these cars that started behind, like Joe Gibbs Racing, that went for, you know what? Screw qualifying. I care about the race. I'll start 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th. I don't care where I start. My car is going to come through the field. And it worked. Last year, for example, at Vegas, in the playoff race, when everybody kind of had this figured out, like, oh, whoa, maybe I should go for a race setup. The winner, Martin Truex Jr., started 24th. Kevin Harvick's, he finished second. He started third, but he's the only one up front that even started in the top 5. Third place started 18th. Fourth place started 8th. Fifth place started 23rd. 6th through 10th, 19th, 14th, 15th, 22nd, 17th. That's 8 of the top 10 starters came from row 7 and further back.
And
So it's like,
we
whoa.
we can figure that out based on how you'll provide the data for the practice speeds. But what about the qualifying runs? How do we find out whether or not a driver happens like Harvick that does qualify in the top 10 where you say, yeah, but that's okay because he had good, maybe, again,
look at his long run speed,
so are we just basically not going to care at all about qualifying? Hey, if he starts up front, that's just an added bonus as long as he has good, long green flag, fast green flag runs that are longer. So is that kind of, hey, qualifying means nothing, and it's just a bonus if he's in the top 10 after a good day on practice?
Yes, that's exactly right. Qualifying is just that, it's cool to get a shiny new Bush Pole Award trophy to take back to your collection, but past that, it doesn't do anything for you because these stats have proven. I mean, just all the races from the playoffs last year forward, because I looked at those because those have the most importance. It's the playoffs. That's when you had 26 races to figure this out, and this trend was every race that they had this format where the qualifying was impound.
Is that the impounding? Okay, so
the impound race.
So we only follow this formula on impound races.
Yes.
Okay.
And this year, I'll find out. I'll tweet that out either this weekend or early next week of how many races are this format, because it's more than half. NASCAR is kind of gravitating toward this trend because you get rid of all the monkey business of the black eye of having cars. Oh, well, he qualified first, but he failed inspection, and third place failed inspection, and fifth place failed. And it's just like, how many cars actually passed? Because that was embarrassing too. So that kind of eliminates all that. And two, it gets a strategy of, because where this comes into play sometimes is short tracks, to where it is harder to come through a field. Do you elect, maybe I want to do a bigger qualifying setup and start towards the front, and I can tinker with my car as the race goes on because I've got good track position, and there may be more cautions. But we'll see when Phoenix comes around in a couple weeks, because it's a new package this year.
Okay.
They went back to the 2018 package. Does that promote more passing? So I would say for this race in general, focus on the long run speeds, and we'll see if there's any switch in the trends. But last year, this trend was the one that proved right. And I even had the stats here from Kansas, which was a couple races later, a mile and a half track playoff race, and the starting positions of the top 10 finishers: 23rd, 14th, 18th, 15th, 25th, 11th, 20th, 21st, 40th, and 12th. There was one car that started in the top 18 that even finished, or started in the top 10 that even finished in the top 18. So that tells you right there, you're not going for top 10 speed, a starting spot. Just perfect your race car. So today, I would say the speed charts, they're glorious. Hey, this guy ran 190 miles an hour. He was the quickest of the day on Friday.
Doesn't matter.
Don't look at that. Look at the long run speed.
And you'll break it down for everybody at racereviewonline.com.
Yep, I'll have it out this evening once it's done. I believe the final practice should run till about 7:30ish, I think.
Okay.
Because the truck race is after, so I'll have that up tonight, and we'll really break that down based off that. So we already kind of have the drivers we think will be good, but let's see what happens past practice, and then I'll put it all together in one format.
Okay. By the way, another wagering tip I noticed going over your information. So, and I don't even remember if they've had. Maybe you do. No, because you're of course working with covers.com as well and handicapping and so forth. But I never noticed a live NASCAR wagering situation before. But I noticed it this year. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't have it before, but I never noticed it until this year. And the reason I noticed it this year is because of the rain delay. Because I looked at the sports book, even though they started the race, and I was kind of, I was wondering, well, it is the Daytona 500. Nothing really happened. It's only 20 laps. I wonder if the sports books will let you bet on the race, even though it started already. Sure enough, they did. They let you bet on the race until there was 20 laps to go. I had never seen that before. So whether that's something that's been around or some sports books had it, some don't, and it's a new thing, and I think it's something that's long overdue if they haven't had it until this year. But a live wagering tip would be, who wins the second stage at Vegas, right?
Yes, yeah. I same way. We talked about that. Talked about that with covers last week. On their show, the Sharp 600. That like, hey, have you noticed any uh, live NASCAR like they are updating as the race goes on? And I couldn't find it last year. I'd never noticed it, and then this year, 500, there it was. So I would assume it's already in place. I know NASCAR in the offseason partnered with a betting firm to try to get the 21st century of
Yeah,
all this since
sure.
it's becoming more and more illegal.
Yeah.
So I would assume it's there. The race is in Vegas, of all places.
Yeah.
So I would think you're going to be on top of it. But here's your strange but true stat. The NASCAR has raced in Vegas 5 times under the staged format, and the winner of the second stage has won the race all 5 times. So
As a
this
fan, we
weekend,
hope that doesn't happen, but that's a good gambling tip.
yes. So if you notice the second stage, and if the live betting is there, and you notice, hey, Mark Truex Jr. won the second stage, throw everything but the kitchen sink at it
Yeah.
because right now this is proven that it's true, and we'll see if it changes. But it just seems like that's the stage that trends hold true, and probably because of the laps and pitting, and there's not a lot of funny business towards the end of that stage because they know they probably only have one more stop for the last stage. That you don't get a fluke winner. It's not somebody trying to stay out and steal a stage win. So
And we're not going
we'll
to see
see if it
any. We shouldn't
happens.
see anything different too in this race with the changes, like you said. We'll see changes potentially in Phoenix, better racing, but what we had last year, we should have this year as far as
The exact same.
Okay.
Yep. Nothing changes.
All
So
right.
that's why you can hold a lot of stock from last year to this one. That's why everybody talked about Joe Gibbs Racing. They won 19 times last year, and other than the short tracks, everything stayed the same. So what makes them think it will be different? That's why a lot of these trends from last year should carry some weight and hold over for this year as well.
Ford has won 5 of the last 8 races here. Chevy hasn't won in the last 6, just one win in the last 9. So, and taking a look at your picks this week, you and I had a wide variety of picks compared to CJ. CJ had, I think, 5 picks, and these were all posted up at Prime Sports Network. You and I had a little bit more variety, as I said. We threw in some long shots. You have Kyle, so you do have a Toyota. You got a Gibbs car there, Kyle. You've taken actually, you went, and I kind of agree with you where I think this is one of those races where I'm not so sure we're going to see a whole lot of long shots. I'm kind of throwing a couple in there personally just in case because it is a new year. But I'm looking at Harvick as my top play this week. I also definitely like Blaney as the top sleeper because I think his odds are too good at 22-1, considering he's got a good history here, considering Logano and Keselowski have a good history here, and we both have taken Logano and Keselowski as well. So we both have all 3 Penske drivers.
Yeah, Penske's I mean, if they win Sunday, this will be their 4th win in Vegas in 7 years, or 7 tries. So they're clearly the top team. Toyota, we saw what Truex did there last year, and it's really between him and Kyle. This isn't one of Denny's best tracks. We haven't seen a guy win 2 races to start the season in a row since 2009. That's 11 years ago. So granted, we haven't seen a guy win 2 straight Daytona 500 since 94, 95, and Denny just did that
Yeah,
too. So trends can be broken, but it just isn't one of his better tracks. This isn't one of Eric Jones's better tracks. So if a Toyota's going to win, it'll be Truex or Kyle. But Kyle just seems it's his home track. He's got 3 straight top 7 finishes.
The only thing with Kyle is he's only led 24 laps in his last 5 races there. That's why I'm staying away from him. And he's only won once at the track. And why I decided to, if I was going to go with a favorite, I was definitely going to go more of Kevin Harvick. And I'm staying away from Truex. And I know you're staying away from Truex because I'm just going to stay away from him until he proves that he can win with his new crew chief.
Yeah, I don't trust. We'll see what he does. This will be their first test. Daytona, not a lot of setups or crew chief dialogue, crew chief driver dialogue that really affects anything. This will be their first test. They got a late start to this, so we'll see how that relationship goes forward. So I'm staying away from it this week. Harvick's a great play. I mean, he's got three straight top four finishes in Vegas. He won this race in 2018, runner up last fall. And we know last year's playoff race or the spring race wasn't in one of his best, but Stuart Haas admitted they went down the wrong direction at the beginning of the year. Took half the season to get it roped back in, figure out what they do, switch it over. And we saw what he did was finish runner up in the playoff race. So great play there. And the Penske's, how could you not? Keselowski's got three straight top three finishes, 9 consecutive top 7 finishes overall. Logano won this race last year. He's got 8 straight top finishes himself. So you can't go wrong there. And you got Blaney. He's got 5 top 7 finishes in his last 6 starts. He was runner-up in Daytona. You know he tweeted about it last night. Very emotional time for him this week. Glad to see Newman walk away. I think his mindset's going to be more the relieved. Look at what his teammates have done. And for, like you said, those odds, 22 to 1.
Oh, yeah.
Why not?
I
mean, he's got the Penske car. And last year, if you remember right, he ran well, but he had a loose wheel, if I'm not mistaken, in the first stage and maybe speeding in the second stage. Those are the mistakes that took him out. It wasn't a car. It was just self-inflicted mistakes. If he can stay away from that, I wouldn't be shocked if he won this race outright.
Yeah, because you would think that if he is going to turn the corner and become the elite driver that he's capable of becoming, and if it happens this year, then this is the type of race that we would expect him to be in the running for a win. So
yeah, plus it's a contract year, and what better way to get, as the stick and ball athletes say, they want to get paid. Well, what better way to get paid for your next contract than win the second race of the year? I mean, that will put, hey, he's in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's guaranteed. They can now swing for the fences, win more races, and this winning on Sunday would really, really throw Ryan Blaney to arguably the top of that free agent list. I know we talk about Kyle Larson and his skill, but Ryan Blaney's right there, a few years younger than Larson, and he's got the talent, and he's with a Penske. If you can win the second race of the year, that's coming out strong. So yes, this is a big race for him in that standpoint.
And then as far as the sleepers, you have, well, of course, you have Elliott as sort of, I wouldn't call him a big sleeper, but he's kind of there. Good odds at 15 to 1. I also took Elliott this week too. But the big long shots, you went with Almirola and Buescher. I went with Bowman, Byron, and DiBenedetto. And interesting, Almirola was 90 to 1 when we had the picks. He's now down to 50 to 1 already. So people have already done what you've done, and that's put a little bit of money on Alec Almirola.
Yeah, I was shocked he was that far. I mean, he's got 3 top 10 finishes in his last 4 Vegas tries. And as I said about Harvick, Stuart Haas came out of the gates wrong last year. They closed the year last year really strong. It feels like they had it dialed in the right direction. So I was shocked he was that low. It's definitely, I mean, that's a play that you've got to take. He's got a new crew chief this year. I think they've got a shot. DiBenedetto is the same way. Vegas hasn't caught up with him yet as far as the odds makers off the racetrack. This isn't one of his stronger tracks, but he hasn't driven for a team like this before. Paul Menard, when he drove this car, had 4 straight top 15 finishes in it, and DiBenedetto is now taking over. I would say nothing against Paul Menard, but DiBenedetto is a better driver. That team is aligned with Penske. They're even closer aligned now. So that's essentially a 4th Penske car. And starting off this week, I'm not mistaken, he was 66 to 1 in a 4th Penske car. And I just said Penske's going for the 4th one in 7 tries at Vegas. So why not for those odds? I think he ran well in Daytona. He just got caught up in that big one on lap 183. So that's definitely one to watch. And as you said, Buescher, he was 3rd in Daytona, and he's driving a car that finished 6th in this race last year. And his last 4 Vegas finishes were 15th in both races in 2018 and 19th or 18th in 2019. And now he's in a better car with that car that finished 6th last year. So I'd be curious what he can do this weekend. And another one worth looking at is Austin Dillon, finished 12th in this race last fall. He's got 4 top 13 finishes in his last 6 Vegas tries. 5th in this race in 2016. He was 100 to 1 opening. So we got a new Chevrolet car. They've got a lot of momentum. And seems like those guys, they'll be probably up there in the practice charts. They kind of are the practice warriors. but let's see their long run speed. So those are 4 drivers right there that are all way long shots that I wouldn't be shocked if they won. So let's watch what they can do this weekend and see going into next week in Fontana if any of those numbers come back to reality a little bit.
All right, Eric. So once again, your report for practice today, that'll be available later tonight?
That'll be hopefully by the time the truck race starts. It depends on how much information I can fit all into one and process it. But if not, it'll definitely be tonight, and then I'll repost it tomorrow, because that post will be I guess the biggest preview you can have going to the race, because tomorrow all there's qualifying. Yeah, this is going to be the one that we can really factor in handicap who's going to be strong and who's not going to be strong for Sunday afternoon's race.
Eric, appreciate it. Great job as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you. Sounds good.